Welcome to the Spotlight on Marketing, brought to us by Lloyd, specialist headhunters in the B2B tech marketing space. I'm your host, Karen Lloyd, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Oren Greenberg. Oren advises B2B businesses in the speciality in the SaaS marketing space. He supported global brands like British Telecom, Canon, and funded category leaders. But he spends his days helping CEOs build those scalable, predictable marketing machines that drive that sustainable growth. But what really fascinates me about Oren is his data-driven approach to marketing. He's been analysing hundreds of SaaS CEOs' LinkedIn profiles and has got some brilliant insights to share about personal branding. Plus, we've got the bonus side too of learning about his approach to modern marketing playbooks. So I've been following Oren's content for a while now, and I can tell you he doesn't hold back. He cuts straight through the noise with a straightforward advice and gets some results. So welcome, Oren.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about this project that you've been running about the personal branding on LinkedIn.
Sure. Yeah. So I've actually been analyzing hundreds and actually thousands of CEO profiles. These are mostly SaaS, but the learnings are applicable to lots of other businesses as well, but also company LinkedIn pages. And I think we started with about 700, 800 or so. And I think now we're on about 13,000. So we've got quite a lot of interesting observations about the differences between the company LinkedIn pages and a personal brand. So I'm a big believer in the growth of personal brand, the creator economy and the opportunities that CEOs and founders have. And I've actually been interviewing a few different ones, and some of them generate almost 70 to 80% of their total pipeline from their team's activity and the CEO's activity on LinkedIn. So it's not just for vanity and being on camera, it's actually for driving real business and commercial results, which is where my real interest lies, in helping my clients scale their businesses. That's why they bring me in. Yeah, so I guess I could get stuck in and talk about some of the learnings from the SaaS CEOs.
Absolutely. It'd be great to know the learnings, but also what inspired you to do this.
It's very often that when I speak to prospects and clients and I ask them, what do you want? Why are we having a conversation? What is it that you're hoping to get out of an engagement together? And they'll say, we want to become category leaders. We want to become thought leaders. I say, what does that mean? Well, it means we want people thinking about us, people talking about us, people consuming our content. Okay. How are you doing that at the moment? And the gap between wanting to become a thought leader and the actual execution that's happening in the business, that gap is usually quite wide. And what I'm trying to do is bridge that gap to help them unlock growth in their organization. So I like data, and sometimes I get into a conversation. And actually, it was interesting. I remember I had a LinkedIn post where I was proclaiming that LinkedIn company pages are dead. But this was a bit, I was being a bit flamboyant with it. It wasn't meant to be, they have a lot of utility. But I think a lot of companies are over-investing in them at the detriment of driving real growth in the business. And what I mean by that is the personal profile reach is about 5 times better than the company LinkedIn page. So even though you can post twice a day on a company LinkedIn page and only about once a day on a personal profile, your probability of reaching more people is a lot higher in personal profiles. But also people are more interested in hearing from a person, someone that they know and have a relationship, someone who's real, than from a company, because company employees are always changing. And it's just like, a company is always going to present itself in a way that's not necessarily the most emotionally resonant. It's going to be more formalized or more structured, right? Because they're broadcasting. So I think there's an opportunity to build personal brand. There's this new term, founder brand, which is also doing the rounds. So some very successful CEOs I was chatting to, they were like, this is fluff. This term doesn't mean anything. I'm like, okay, what's your thesis? What's your philosophy? And some of them just say, just be of service, just be helpful, just educate. So they're not necessarily thinking they're not trying to measure all of the activity. They're not trying to drive performance, but others are. And I think it's a very interesting spectrum of just being vocal and being out there and contributing and having a voice in the community or the industry versus, a very methodical approach to driving growth in a very systematic, measured way. I'm more on that spectrum. I'm more interested in measuring what's performing because my background's performance marketing. So I'm very interested in like a scientific, experimental approach to driving growth rather than a abstract or conceptual or more shoot from the hip type of way. I think it's a balance. I don't think it's this or that. I think you got to balance and do both. But yeah, I remember I did this post and some of the comments, mostly from marketers and marketers managing company LinkedIn pages, they started really trolling me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go get the data to prove that I was right. So I went and I got the data to prove that I was right. And I was right. The average engagement across 900 plus company pages is like 4 likes per post. The average, they barely got even 1 comment. And there are outliers, and some of the outliers are exceptional, and they do a brilliant job. You know, the paddles or the chili pipers or the gongs, or, you know, B2C, there's a few examples as well, like Surreal. And they do an exceptional job. But there's very, 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 very few of them, like very surprisingly low amount, and almost all of them are larger companies that are quite established.
Yeah. What's the common denominator about the outliers that do well? What do you think? What's the attributes of them? What are they posting? What's the secret?
I think the secret is this is going to sound quite silly, they believe in it. They believe that it's a strategic imperative to do marketing well. They believe that we need to have a meaningful relationship, we need to be producing great content, and we need to invest in the right team to do it properly with the right distribution. So they have the budget and the strategic imperative to drive, like, being top of mind and, you know, being in the consideration set when someone's ready to be a buyer. And I think it comes from an emotional belief with a strategic imperative that has the line item in the P&L to back it up. Because you can't, you know, like, being creative is not a marketing strategy. Like, you know, all marketing fundamentally requires budget. Even organic SEO, you got to produce content, you need to get backlinks. Or even LinkedIn organic, you got to produce great content because there's so much noise, so you have to be above the noise. And I think because there's limited budgets and everyone's spread thin and everyone's like trying to do too much, and it's like common across everyone I know and work with, you have to choose where you're allocating and putting your attention and your resource. And for these companies, they put that at quite a high standard. I think there's a passion and an interest in doing it as well. I think a lot of them, the personas who drive the business, are vocal and active on social as well. It's not just, I have a social media manager or marketer, go grow the business. It's like, I'm personally interested in how we become more vocal and more active and draw more attention, and the pipeline follows. And some of them, I started to CMO, it's got 150,000 followers, and 30% of the business's pipeline comes from his profile. And he's a CMO, not the CEO. Then I talked to another CEO, SaaS business, about 70% of the pipeline comes from his profile and the team's profile. So some companies, they're just riding that wave and they know how to capitalize it, and they're dedicated to getting the most out of it. While others are, I think, spread thin, trying to do stuff that's easy, probably don't have the confidence, don't have the experience.
And also, I think it's the time, because you see those benign posts on LinkedIn, and it's just basically the Christmas party, or someone's knitted a jumper and they're giving to charity or something. Or, hey, we're at an event, come and visit on stand 52. And those are boring posts. How can you engage with a post like that? Okay, we're coming, or not. So I think it's about taking the time and maybe having a bit of I don't know if there is a framework, but I know you and I both post on LinkedIn, and we both have a bit of a framework. We think about what we're posting. Some of it is emotional things I just want to tell that I just think is useful and is a bit about me, but some of it I have a strategy to as well.
I'm not so strategic with my content. I feel it's a more creative endeavor. So I look for inspiration that comes from my conversations with clients or marketers that I support. And I look for information that I read that I have a strong feeling about. And I'm like, I'm frustrated about this. That's going to make for good content. I'm inspired by this. That's going to make for good content. This is really interesting data I feel compelled to share. That's going to make interesting content. So, I mean, my strategy is like post the highest possible quality content as frequently as possible. That's like my strategy. But I do invest in it heavily. I do learn a lot about it. I have lots of relationships with lots of creators, some with 1 million+ followers across social, and I have one-on-one with them on WhatsApp. And we're always learning and adapting. So I see it's like an interesting blend of expert, because of marketing, because I've been in marketing for 20 years, a CMO helping large clients and VC-backed businesses, with the creator economy or the influencer, whatever that's called nowadays, which is, creating unique content that's, I think, is interesting or compelling, content that I would want to consume, content that I was like, I'm going to make the time for that guy. That person's saying something that's insightful. I mean, interesting enough, across the CEO's profiles, that type of content was the best performing was when they raised a funding round. And I think that's quite interesting and telling as to this like broadcasting of success. I mean, how many businesses do we know have raised a lot of money and gone under? Like so many. And some of them have raised ridiculous amount, like hundreds of millions just gone down the drain. And I think people want to hoot for someone's success, and raising money is a token of I'm investing towards a vision. And I think it's part of a good story, a good narrative. I'm curious to see how's this business going to perform. But the second post that was quite interesting, that was quite surprising in terms of like its success and reach, was these kind of personal athlete type stories. Like, I ran this crazy marathon, I did Ironman. So I maybe call them incredible feats. And I think people are seeking inspiration that's personal. And I was kind of surprised. It was interesting. But, very consistently, a lot of the CEOs I looked at don't even post, like a big chunk of them, 30-40%. And of the ones who do, they post an average once or twice a week. So very low. So there's just not much competition. There is in terms of the total noise. But if you think about who do I want to hear from, like the random person who's self-promoting or a CEO of a successful business, everyone wants to hear from the people who are very successful. And it's quite interesting because the people who are very successful are so busy managing their business that they maybe don't see the utility or don't have the energy. I saw someone the other day, quite interesting, like, scaled a business, bootstrapped it, doing about 40 million annual recurring revenue. And I said, we have to get you on camera. He's like, why? I think you're inspiring. I think that you'll inspire a lot of young people to become better versions of themselves. And I think you've got so much learning and experience that other entrepreneurs can learn from. And I think you'll benefit greatly from building and attracting all this opportunity and building meaningful relationships. And he just cringed. He was just like, I don't want to do that. And you could see it's like an emotional reaction. It's almost like saying, do you want to do public speaking? No one wants to do public speaking. Everyone wants to, because they want to grow out of their comfort zone and they want the benefit of becoming a public speaker, becoming a notorious figure, becoming influential. But no one actually wants the pain and discomfort of being on a stage and either being heckled or making a mistake publicly that's caught on camera in front of hundreds of thousands of people. So I think it's I can see a lot of them, they rationalize why they don't do it. But really, it's coming from an emotional place. I'm sure the ones who are listening to this are cringing at the moment. They're like, that's not me.
And for people, I'd say for me, I think about any speech or anything else. I don't necessarily enjoy it. Even recording a podcast, I sometimes get nervous before we do it. But I see it like running a race. But you've chosen to do the race. You've turned up. You've trained for it. You're prepared. And while you're running the race, you probably at times you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone all the way around if you want to get the best time. And it's only when you cross the line and you go, I did it. I'm glad I did that. I'm going to do another one now. But if you ask 10 minutes before, no.
Yeah. It was also like, if you're running it and either like you're not where you wanted to be, when you go through the finish line, you've grown as a person as a result of pushing out your comfort zone. Like you've challenged yourself to do something you hadn't done before. And I think the truth is in life, you've only got two ways. You're either growing or you're shrinking. Life just doesn't, there's always atrophy, and life just doesn't allow for us to just like chill. So you're either decaying or you're growing. So it's like, I think therefore there's only one option. And the only one option you have is to grow beyond your comfort zone and become a better version of who you were yesterday.
Exactly. And that feels uncomfortable. It does, doesn't it? And, and you have to keep pushing yourself. It's getting that balance right of not pushing too hard, I think, personally. But no, that's great. I had an interesting observation, actually, of a founder I'm following on LinkedIn. And I particularly liked his posts because he's one of the only few that I've done this. But they run a business that works with trades. That's part of their model. And he regularly goes in front of a store where they're doing a business with one of their partners and kind of does like a thumbs up with a couple of the other people with a bit of the product. And I was just like, do you know what? I always engage with it. It made me feel that this person's a human being. I liked him just for the way he spoke and everything else. I think he was a really good example of someone that is doing it right. And he did get a fair bit of engagement because obviously all the partners are engaging and other people. So I think it made you maybe think, I want to be a partner because like I get the CEO to come down. So it's that emotion, I think, that it evokes.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day and done a very specific niche in SaaS, and a lot of their pipeline comes from engaging with partners and the community on LinkedIn. And this person kind of has a personal brand, and she's very active with engaging with her community. She's not the first, actually. I can think of like 2 or 3 others who've done that. They've become notorious in that niche, and they're kind of a hub of that community. A lot of opportunity to do that. I think some people find it more natural and others find it less natural. I think it's about, creating that connection and thinking about creating meaningful connections. That's how I think about it. I don't think about the number of people who see me, and I don't think about these instances where I'm at WeWork in London and someone taps my shoulder and goes, "Are you Oren?" I go, "Yeah." "Oh, I follow you on LinkedIn." Or I'm at an event. It's like, "Oh, I follow you on LinkedIn." And it's like, "Oh, I was at an event the other day, and I met 6 different people that I didn't know were going to be at that event." And they come up to me and say, "Oh, I've been chatting with you on LinkedIn for the last 5 years." And it's like, "Oh, that's you." And you're like, "Ah, this is great." I'm like building all these relationships with all these human beings. Like one of them I worked with 20 years ago. It's pretty crazy. I was like, "What do you do now?" And it's like, "I'm super successful." It's like really lovely to see. So yeah, I think it's just like the digital conduit to when we all used to go to BNI locally, right? There's business networking, lunches and breakfast to try and get to know peers and people. I think the digital is just an extension of that. But I do think it's a skill that requires practice, like most things in life.
Yeah, and accepting that it's something to do, because I know some companies, they just don't believe in it. I know some marketers that said we don't do anything on social media because our CEO doesn't believe in it. He doesn't want someone to troll him or not like us. I can understand that. When I first started posting on LinkedIn, I was fearful of what I would say. And I think twice I've had someone say something or do something inappropriate, and I just blocked the person and moved on. And maybe for a half an hour it affected my mood, and I was just like, well, I can't control the people. I've got so many other people that I help by my content. So like you, I try and post things meaningful. I have relationships. I even have friends, people that I consider friends. I've never met these people. I may have spoken to them, but we'd had a conversation from LinkedIn, and I'll have helped them on their side of things, and they'll have helped me on theirs. And I don't know, it just gives you sort of like a strange warmth.
Yeah, so opportunity amplifier.
Yeah, but is there anything else you want to talk about LinkedIn, or anything about companies that are not willing to do it? From if a CEO says I'm not doing it, what would you say to them?
Just let it go. You can't do it. You can't force someone to do something they don't want to do. And the more you push, the more resistance is going to be built.
Or you could just give them some data. They could show them your report.
Data's always it always aids people in validating or helping them conform to what they believe. It's very rare that I see data really changing people's minds. It's quite interesting.
Really interesting. I've never heard someone say that before, so that is interesting.
There was some research on this recently, actually. They did this data about, they're testing people's political views, and then they asked them to perform on math tests, and they would change the results to math tests and provide wrong answers if the answer would go against their political view. And it was fascinating that they would end up in the wrong answer with a binary. You either get right or wrong, and they'll still opt for the wrong answer if it contradicts something they believe in. And it just reinforces that, like, everyone says I come with an open mind, but the reality is we're not very open-minded, even though we believe that we are. It's like we want to be. I think we aspire to adaptability, but the truth is the deep sense of bias that people have is insurmountable. It's very, very difficult to shift it. And I've seen so many internal debates trying to shift someone from the wrong path. And it's just like trying to move an immovable object. So when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, so it doesn't go anywhere. So now I choose to allocate my resources to that which is most efficient. So I need to balance effectiveness and efficiency. And sometimes something could be effective, but it's so inefficient to do it that you could get all these other quick wins. And in aggregate, you'll be more effective because it's so much more efficient to deliver. And the truth is, a lot of businesses grow without the CEO being public. A lot of cases like that. And a lot of cases where it's just a way to scale the business. And it's not right for every business either. So I'm not, from my perspective as a marketer, I'm interested in like how to drive the business. This is just one of the topics that I've kind of developed expertise in over the years, and growing my own profile, And it comes up a lot with my clients because a lot of them want to either grow personal brand or leverage social to grow their business and accelerate growth. So it just comes up a lot. And I've ended up kind of dabbling in it a fair bit as a result of that.
Yeah, I think the point you made is really good. It's a step ladder of change, isn't it? No one goes from being one belief to another. You have to step change it. So maybe over a 10-year period, they may change it, but it's not going to be a quick win. So I think it's a good advice if they really don't want to do it, pick something else where they're already halfway up the ladder and take them to the top rather than have to start at the beginning. It's almost like we've probably got all, different decisions at different points in the ladder, like of getting someone to change. But there we go. So let's talk about your modern marketing playbook then. So when you engage or support with a CEO who's looking for growth, what are the top 2 things they usually say they're looking for from you?
I think it almost always comes down to like building brand awareness and then also building pipeline and revenue. And I think it's somehow the research for marketing has infiltrated, and a lot of non-marketers understand that basic principle of marketing. And that's good because that didn't used to be the case. Funny enough, I just did this report with this partnership with HubSpot. And we're looking for the 2025 marketing report. Or just literally, it should go live in a week or 2. The pieces of data was top priorities for marketers for 2025. And there was brand awareness, which was like 41% of respondents, and then lead generation at 35%. I think that really indicates like the ratio that people think when they think about the marketing activity. Like there's not a lot of companies that are really going all in on brand. And I think businesses have shifted for going all in on performance marketing and paid ads and SEO. And I think companies are going towards like quite a balanced ratio. So I think it's not surprising to me that I get prospects or customers saying that that's their view. And I think it's a sensible view. I don't think there's a generic ratio. I think it depends on what's the opportunity in your category, how competitive is your category, where are you in your category? Are you category leader or not? Because if you are a category leader, you want to overinvest in brand to maintain that position compared to just going to performance and just to drive pipeline. So I think it is very specific to that business in this category rather than going like spend 60% of your budget on brand awareness, 40% performance, which I think is like the generic formula that has kind of been propagated through all the meta information. Because what happens is there's an original piece of research and then someone regurgitates it and someone else regurgitates what that person regurgitates, and very few people actually go to the root of where that piece of information came from because it's been regurgitated by a credible source or semi-credible source. So it's actually sometimes you got to go through a rabbit hole to find out where it originated from. And this was actually, this whole 60-40 example actually was automobiles and cars and B2C. And it was not really, it wasn't rigorously researched in the same way when it was applied to B2B. It was just extrapolated. So it's quite interesting to see how the marketing academic circles evolve and the interaction between practitioners who are in the businesses, the senior leaders in those businesses, because there's only like 240,000 CMOs in the world, right? There's not that many CMOs relative to the number of businesses. But when you think about marketers, there's like, about 9 million marketers. There's a lot of more marketers than there are senior executives. So it's interesting to see how it propagates and how misinformation propagates, but where did it originally come from and who originated the research and how valid is it? How rigorous is it?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point because I think there is that perception, probably based on research, that there is this magical playbook that people even ask people at interview, a CEO will ask a CMO, what's your playbook that you're going to bring? So, what's your belief in having the magical playbook? Is there such a thing?
No. I think it's very industry specific, business stage specific, audience specific. But I mean, there are fundamentals of every playbook that apply, and they all go through the same methodology, which is I need to test different audiences on different channels with different messages, with different value propositions. And if I play around with these combinations, eventually I'll get traction somewhere. And that's the only proven effective methodology that is applicable to all of these things that they have in common. But in terms of a specific playbook, no, but there are popular playbooks, like there are things that are working better now. So for example, you have a target list of accounts, you get a target list of people, you start connecting to them, sending personalized messages on LinkedIn, then you start producing content. And this content reaches these individuals on their newsfeed, or you send them in the message. And what happens is you're increasing the probability of being top of mind with your target prospect list. And this is a very popular playbook that's kind of doing the rounds now. And then it's kind of evolved. So now what you can do is you go and you use IP recognition software. Some of them have it built in, like 6 Sense. There's standalone tools like Lead Feeder or Lead Forensics or Snitcher. I kind of like Snitcher. Some of them have it built in, like Dream Data, but it's not as rigorous. And you can see which accounts come to the website and how are they engaging. Then you can look at how people are engaging with comments and likes and link on social posts, looking at the engagement of the company or the business. And then your sales efforts and marketing efforts are prioritizing those accounts that are showing the highest propensity for engagement. So this playbook, which is like, some of them call it like warm outbound inbound. So they're inbound leads that show engagement and then you outbound to them. And it's like, people are trying to bridge all this terminology that's meant to delineate different methodologies or playbooks. That's quite a common one. Another one that's quite interesting that's happening is this AI being leveraged for contextualization. And some people doing it right, which is researching an account and a persona and personalizing that journey in the sales process or the outreach or paid advertising. And that's the right way to do it. And the second is they're using AI SDRs, which is like they're automating the outsource of the creative of the message to send the messages. And that isn't performing. Like I've not yet spoken to anyone who's doing automated AI outbound end to end. There's different levels of sophistication. Like, a lot of people are using Clay or Evergrowth as platforms to contextualize and personalize. Clay's done a great job with like smashing it with creators, which has led to its scale. It's built a great product. I mean, I use Clay. A lot of my clients use Clay. So I'm a fan of the product. They've even created a new job title that's been created, which is like a growth engineer, someone who can blend the pulling of the data. It's kind of marketing operations meets sales operations. So it's kind of an interesting hybrid. And there's not many people in the market who are really good at both. So it's a new job title. And I think it was their growth. They've raised a big now, and they've kind of created a new category. They're just leveraging AI. There's a few players in this space who are doing it. They're very interesting. I'm very curious and interested in AI. I do a lot of experiments myself, and I use AI a lot for clients. If it's exporting contacts from HubSpot and classifying and labeling them and trying to group to understand who is the job title that's most likely to buy, which deal has the highest propensity based on the ideal customer profile definition. So, there's a lot of labeling and classification of data to analyze, to draw insights that lead into the marketing strategy and sales strategy. So I think some of those, just noting some of the playbooks that I'm seeing are quite popular. One thing worth mentioning is just to tie in the two threads of personal brand and leveraging your team with this modern playbook on LinkedIn with, reaching out, building connections, producing content, is not overly reliant on the organic algorithm, which comes and goes. Like some months I've reached 650,000 people and had like videos do 1.2 million views. And then 2 months later, all the videos are doing like 5,000. And you're like, this is just LinkedIn tweaking its video algorithm. So it's like, because of that volatility, it's very hard to build predictability. So if you want to build consistent, predictable pipeline, you're probably going to have to rely on paid ads. So you're going to have to take that content and amplify that through paid ads on LinkedIn through thought lead ad format and get that reach and awareness rather than necessarily focusing it traditionally on like lead generation. We're trying to have a form where people download the ebook. Those days are long gone. It's now we're shifting from a world of traffic to a world of awareness, and it's moving to attention. And how do you measure attention, and how do you garner relevant attention with your audience, your ideal customer profile, your ideal buyer persona?
And I know before when we spoke, before you even implement a playbook, you have a marketing strategy and framework that you do before to decide which playbook you're going to do. So would you want to walk us through what your framework is and your strategy? I've got a visual, which I think we'll put in the show notes if you're happy for me to do so. But that gives the preamble to the playbook, basically.
This is the marketing model, right?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So originally, when marketing as a discipline evolved, and this is like over 100 years ago, marketing was an intrinsic part of business strategy, and you couldn't really separate business and marketing. And the world has become a lot more fragmented and complex. And because of the shift to digital, the fragmentation of digital, marketing has progressively become specialized. So now you have a Google Ads guy, you have a Facebook ads, you have product marketing, you have PR and comms, etc. And what that's created is a scenario where marketing is kind of progressively being diluted into tactics. And this is marketing communications. And what's missing is this pillar above it, which is marketing strategy. And marketing strategy really comes down to like competitive research, positioning, your messaging, your value proposition articulation, your audience, segmentation. And all of these different areas, they're being diluted. And they're just being skipped over. And I see it because I'll get, business comes to me and they're spending 60K a month on paid ads. And you start looking at measurement and they're like, don't have properly measurement in place. You put measurement in place and you're like, you're not getting any ROI on this investment. You're spending a lot of money. And then you're going to go, okay, but why? And the answer is typically they're going too broad, targeting too many irrelevant people with messaging that's not really honed in and tight enough. So instead of segmenting the audiences and having relevant message for each audience, they just have a very generic message that's going out to a lot of the wrong people. And there's massive wastage. I think the biggest problem with marketing is the inefficiency. And the inefficiency directly impacts the effectiveness. So when I come in, I make sure the foundations are in place. Has positioning been done properly? And is it data-led or is it speculative? And how has segmentation been thought through? And what is the messaging framework? And is that data-led? What is the testing there? And I just take a data-led approach to the foundational strategy before I start deploying. Now, there's sometimes quick wins that you can deploy and get efficiency. If there's some sort of channel that's working, it needs to be optimized. So sometimes I'll come in and they're kind of getting an okay result, or they're kind of almost there. And you just make a few tweaks and suddenly you'll see like, great. We're now getting a great CAC LTV, cost of customer acquisition to lifetime value ratio. Like we're actually starting to, or like, you wouldn't be able to see that in a short time frame because LTV takes years, but you'll be able to see a payback window. And if the payback window is, you shortened it, before it was 24 months and now you're getting it in like 3 months or 6 months, then now we're unlocking cash flow to reinvest in driving growth. And other businesses, I'd say most of the businesses I work with, they come to me because they're interested in growth. And some of them, they're doing 15 mil ARR. Like they're already a successful, highly profitable business, but they just have great growth ambitions. And some of them, they're earlier stage. They're in like 800K ARR. They're much earlier in their journey. And they have a growth trajectory. And business number one, the growth trajectory is a much more steady. And business number two is a VC-backed business. So they're hyper growth. They need to grow at like 11 to 20% week on week. So far more aggressive growth rather than the 20, 30% annual growth rate, like the 15 mil ARR bootstrapped business. But all businesses, they have an ambition to grow. And that's typically what's a common trend with all the businesses I work with. So I have to balance quick wins with long-term strategic endeavors that are going to drive the commercial results that they're looking for.
It's a really good point, actually, about the different types of companies and their sort of passion to grow as well, from what you just said, because I think some people, definition of growth is different. Some people think growing is just basically having more money than we had last year, whereas others is actually scaling it and turning it into something that they can potentially sell. But I think if it's a founder-led business, the chances are, if they've been going for more than 5 years and they haven't had any outside support and they're not consistently growing, they've probably reached that plateau and they probably need somebody else to come in. Because how many companies do you meet? Not many, I don't, that say we don't want to grow, we just want to stay as we are.
I don't meet any of them because most of the people who reach out to me want to grow. So
yeah,
I suspect they're out there, but there's other issues going on inside that business. Probably.
They also probably still want to grow, but they don't know how to grow. They still think they're going to grow, but they just think it's going to happen. They're not going to. It's just going to happen to them. It's just they're in that middle piece. But anyway, no, thank you. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. It's been a real true pleasure having you on. I also know that Oren does also mentor, so I'll also put a link and stuff. So if you need someone to mentor in your team, he also offers that service as well. So thank you for tuning into the Spotlight of Marketing. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate and review the podcast. And don't forget to share it with your CEO, your friends, your colleagues in the marketing space. Until next time, keep shining that spotlight of the power of marketing and driving business growth.